at the hour. I think we're ready to be
Okay.
played into our
Let us
Psalms.
begin.
Good
Adrian?
morning, everybody. I wanted to reflect basically how I feel about our getting together and coming together these wonderful mornings for Psalms class. And I feel that as we study, for me, it's a form of joining in communal prayer. So I wanted to play a little excerpt from the Bloch suite from Jewish Life. The first little movement is called Prayer. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Bloch from his Sacred Service, which I believe our chorus did. A wonderful Swiss-American composer who always felt that his most significant music was driven by his Jewish background. His father, I believe, wanted to be a rabbi at one point in his adult life and made sure that his children had very thorough religious training. So here we go. This is just the first two sections of it.
Wow. Look at the applause you're getting, Adria. Thank you so much. Spectacular.
No, thank you.
Beautiful. Wow.
I have no
Always.
idea how it sounds over Zoom.
It sounds pretty good, actually. It sounds really good. One instrument sounds actually quite good.
It's weird.
Thank you. All right, everybody. So thank you for that. Let me go back to gallery view. Good morning, everybody. What a fantastic and perfect way to join together this morning. Today is Lag BaOmer. So I just wanted to say a word about that before we begin our exploration of, or continuing our exploration of Psalm 5. Some of you heard my drash on Friday night about Lag BaOmer. So Lag BaOmer is the 33rd day of the counting of the Omer, which we start in our tradition on the second night of Passover. There are some traditions that it's a different time of the starting of the counting, but for our purposes, we start on the second night of Passover and count 49 days. And then that's how we find out where Shavuot is, which will be this year, May 28th. And we are doing Shavuot on Zoom this year. We're going to have study sessions. We're going to have a Mariv service and then study sessions. And then we're going to all eat cheesecake in our separate little places. So bring your own cheesecake or blintzes. But so this is the 33rd day of the counting. And as I described on Friday night, there's a tradition that the first 33 days of the Omer are a period of mourning, mourning, mourning of being sad. And there's an element of where we embrace traditional Jewish mourning practices, like some men don't shave their beards. Nobody cuts their hair. So we're kind of, being very machmir, as we say. We're being very traditional this year. and certain prayers are not said and certain prayers are said. And the 33rd day, we're told, is the end of the Omer, of the mourning period, because of there are different traditions that explain this. The most well-known one is that we're told that Rabbi Akiva, who was the famous rabbi of the early Mishnah time, he lived in around the year 100-ish after the Common Era, so the 2nd century after the Common Era. I don't remember the exact dates, but 100-ish. And he was, if you remember your stories of Rabbi Akiva, he was one of the greatest scholars of his time, although he was born into poverty and did not know very much, and he had to teach himself as an adult, and then he became a great scholar. And he's the one that ultimately was killed. And when he died, he said the Shema and said, now I understand what it means. He was died as a martyr, to love God with all my heart, with all my soul, and now with all my body. But he had 24,000 students who were all killed by a plague in this period of time. We're told it was a plague. We don't know a lot about the plague, but it feels so close to home right now. 24,000 of his students were killed by the plague. And so we remember the destruction of learning and of knowledge and of tradition. And that on the 33rd day of the month of the 33rd day of the counting of the Omer, the plague stopped. And I think until this year, I've never totally understood the kind of jubilation. If we can you imagine if one day the plague we're having now just stopped, how it would feel? Of course, we would want to mark it in a way that generations would remember, but we don't have that luxury. But we are remembering that plague stopped. And although 24,000 students were killed, which is an enormous cost and number, 5 survived. And that's a small number compared to how many were killed. But of the 5 who survived, one was Shimon Bar Yochai, who we're told who we tradition holds is the creator of the Kabbalistic tradition in Judaism, that he wrote the Zohar, which scholars now know probably wasn't true, but our tradition says that he wrote the Zohar, which is the main book of the Kabbalah, and it's a book of light. And the Zohar means, literally the word Zohar means light. And so the tradition developed of building bonfires to create light to remember Shimon Bar Yochai on Lag BaOmer, and to go to his grave on a mountain in the north of Israel. And traditionally, tens of thousands of people go to his grave on Lag BaOmer. This year, they can't go. Only small numbers are allowed to go because of COVID-19. And bonfires have been outlawed all over Israel because of social distancing. But they're allowing a bonfire to be lit, I think, on Har Meron, which is where his grave is. So it's traditional to study things of mystical tradition on Lag BaOmer, and to remember Shimon Bar Yochai, who's one of the 5 surviving students. And for me, the story reminds us over and over again that losses can be terrible, but we are always building toward the future. And it doesn't take the 24,000 who were killed, we mourn, but the 5 who survived built the future on which all of us built our traditions of being Jews. So to not give up and to mourn our losses, but also continue to build towards the future. And we associate this day, the one who survived, or of the 5 survived, spreading light, from which we can now kind of pick up the image we focus on Lag BaOmer, is to pick up a little bit of the spark, a little bit of the light, and it's our job to keep spreading it. So I leave that with you for Lag BaOmer, and we're going to spread some light by looking at Psalm 5. Judy,
Rabbi,
yes.
just real quick, I went to the place where his supposed to be his cave, and I have a wonderful picture. I'll send it to Harold. And then, okay.
Yeah, did you go on Lag BaOmer another time?
No, I went in November.
Good, because if you go on Lag BaOmer, it's filled with,
There were enough Orthodox guys running around screaming and chanting.
And it was November.
That it was enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's like 50,000 people go on Lag BaOmer normally, but this year they are only allowing very small numbers. And anyway, okay, so Psalm 5. And Harold is still taking any Psalms we're going to be doing this.
We actually had an editorial meeting this morning before
Oh,
class.
wow. Do you want to report on that?
Betsy Immersheim and Megan Cossey have agreed to be co-editors. And so we're setting up some style guides and things like that. We are still taking contributions for 1 through 4, and I'm open for contributions for 5. And we're hoping that a week from this Friday will be the complete cutoff for any new contributions. We'll be editing things, and then we will have our big launch. We'll have a Zoom launch party for our first publication.
Wow, fabulous.
So I'll be sending out an email with all the details, but I wanted to thank very deeply Betsy and Megan for for stepping up to do this. Both of them have professional experience in writing and publishing.
Great.
So now on to our psalm.
Now on to our psalm. So let's continue. I want to do one run through. We're going to continue and then come back. But Randy, I want to say Randy Sarakoff asked an excellent question yesterday that I want to get to. She pointed out and showed me, she sent me some of her books. When Yud Hey Vav Hey is used, they don't even print Yud Hey Vav Hey. They do other, and that's, you'll find that in some of, I'm not sure if other people have seen that in whatever printing you have. Some Orthodox printing will not even print Yud Hey Vav Hey. They're doing the Siyag La Torah, the fence around the Torah. So they might print just a Hey for Hashem or a Yud Yud, which stands for the Yud Hey Vav Hey. So it doesn't mean they're using a different name for God. It's just they don't even want to print Yud Hey Vav Hey, and they're using that to be a representation of the Yud Hey Vav Hey. So thank you, Randy, for that question, and thank you for noticing that. That's very good, a good eye on that. But it does mean Yud Hey Vav Hey. They're just not even comfortable printing it. And you'll find that in different books where if it's, especially if it's not, they might do it if it's they might do Yud Hey Vav Hey if it's the full Tanakh, but if they're just printing the Psalms, they might replace it. And they know that the reader will know that it's Yud Hey Vav Hey, but still they'll only pronounce it Adonai. All right? And I encourage everybody to keep remembering to think about studying in memory of someone and put it in the chat as we dedicate our study together. So let's go to verse, I think, 5, and then we're going to come back. Hopefully we'll get through we have 13 verses. Verse 5. Okay, so we did this one yesterday. Remember, we have the parallelism of Rasha and Ra. Resha, that segol vowel is very interesting to me. I don't understand it, but I'll try and look that up. So, Ki lo el chafetz Rasha, you are not a god. And remember, this psik with the ata is very interesting, why it's there. Lo yigurcha ra. That certainly makes sense that ata goes for the first half, despite and I think that's how I would read it also. So I'd put the colon after the you, because and then lo yigurcha ra. Evil cannot abide with you. No abiding with you, evil. 6. Lo yitatzvu, holalim leneged einecha. Now this is going into the description, and you'll see this over and over again, and we saw this a little bit in some of the earlier Psalms. What are there'll be contrast between what are the negatives and what are the positives. So wanton men, or those who do evil, let's see, what are some translations, holalim, that you have in yours? Sometimes they'll be translated as those who boast or debauch. So somehow some who go leneged einecha, over and over again, and Jacob Nimi talked about this, sight, so going against your sight or your eyes. I'm going to do quite literally until we go into some of the soneta kol poale oven. You hate. Lisno is to hate, the opposite of lehevahov. You hate all those poale oven, who are doers, Poel is a doer or a worker or a maker. It's literally the word for verb in Hebrew. So it's some who is making oven, evil. So evil doers or bad doers. 7. Te'abed dovrei chazav ish damim umirma yita'ev Hashem. Te'abed. Abed is to, here the translation is doom or to destroy or to lose. Also, you will see a lot of different translations of this, but it's quite active and it's you. It's speaking to God. Dovrei, those who speak. Dover, ledaber is to speak. Chazav, who speak. We had the word chazav earlier, meaning lies or bad things. Ish damim umirma yita'ev Hashem. So again, all these are the negative things and saying, uh-oh, my dog needs to go out again. In and out. This is both dogs hate having the doors closed on them, and Randy in one room, me in another, and they can't figure out where they want to be. So I apologize. So again, it's speaking directly to God and it's saying, surely you hate these things. Now notice what the different bad things are, and we'll get back to that. What are evildoers? 7 starts describing what are evildoers. Speak. So remember in Psalm 1, we had people who are speaking bad things. We understand that speech can be evil, and also people who do bad things. It's very much the psalmist is focused over and over again and understanding that evil is not just bad deeds. Evil is also in speech. 8 is a big fulcrum sentence here, one of those big turning sentences. Okay, these are all the things that that holiness does not want. The energy, the force for things that are good in the universe, holiness does not want. Evil, people who speak lies, murder, deceit, those are the bad things. And verse 8 is, of course, a very, very famous verse that is pulled from this psalm and used in our prayer life. And we'll talk about that. And now we understand this is 8. And remember, there are 13 verses. This becomes a fulcrum verse. But I, the vav before I, is a distinction. If God just tests people, God, meaning holiness in the universe, does not want evil, whether it's in speech or deed. Verse 8 is the fulcrum verse. Va'ani. The vav here is the disjunctive from all of the things that holiness in the world hates. And says, no, okay, all of that might be all the evil in the world. Va'ani, but I. Berov chastecha. Because rov, here's that word again, rov, rabim, that we, in abundance or a lot of or multitudes, chastecha. Chesed, you've heard the word chesed. We have the chesed committee, or the chesed means sometimes translated as loving kindness. It's often translated as loving kindness. But I, in distinction to the things that are destroy or remove or strip holiness from the world, but I, because I've experienced loving kindness, avo, I will come veitecha. And here's the etnachta. Avo means to enter or to come. And the contrast between those earlier psukim and this verse is strong. I, because of you, no, I still need that verse. I still need verse. But I, because of an abundance of loving kindness that I've experienced in my life, I will come veitecha, to your abundance, to your house, your presence. Semicolon. Eshtacha veh. I will bow down. I will prostrate myself. El heichal, in your heichal is a temple or a palace or a beautiful, so the heichal is the parallelism to beitecha, to house. So house is parallel here. They're translating it as temple. It could be just a beautiful a palace or a larger or a more ornate house. Kodshecha, your holy house. Be'iratecha, with awe. So we see this is a parallelism that I'm going to enter your house, and then I will, and it's a parallelism with the with escalation. I will be able to, because I've experienced your loving kindness, I will live in the presence of your house, your place, and I will bow down in this holy place with awe. I will not be full of deceit. So it's a contrast. I will not say lies. I will not be evil. I will not murder, but I will live in this place of holiness. 9. Yud He Vav He. Now notice verse 8 starts with the speaker says, what I will do in order, I will reach out to holiness. I will place myself into places of sacredness. I will take myself away from evil, and I will want to be in the place of holiness. And then we get the Yud He Vav He. And the Holy One, Necheni, will lead me along. But now in B'tzedek, in this, the third word in Hebrew has in the shoresh, the 3-letter root, Tzadi Daled Kuf, which is like tzedakah, tzedek, tzadik. So in righteousness, in justice. And so this is all in contrast to those earlier verses, which are full of evil and lies and murder and deceit. But because I want to be in the place of holiness, and I want to be in the place where things are just, you will give me. So now, because I've stepped forward again and again, we will see this. First, the speaker says, I will, avo, I will come. Now, God will be with me in justice. Because Lama'an Shorarai, because of my watchers, that now here we have, this is an example of a scribal question mark. We don't know what this word is exactly, the He Vav Shin Resh, and the editor is saying this is how we pronounce it. We read it differently than it's written. Make your way straight, and yashar means straight, not in sexuality, but in direction. Make your path, darkecha, derech is a path. Make your way clear, straight before your path. All right, we're going to keep going, and then we're going to go back and look at some of these words with greater detail. 9. So now I think this is now longer than, right? We've had 9 verses. Now we're up to 10, right? Ki ein befihu, there is nothing in their mouths, and nechona, correct. Karban, I just want to check this word here, befihu nechona, right? So there's no sincerity on their lips or in their mouth. So again, we're now going back to a description of things that are without holiness. And notice how much of it is about speech. How much of it is about speech, not just action. And here, what their heart, hayut, kever patuach, geronam, lishonam, yachalikun. Wow, that's quite a word. Okay? So their mouths are full of insincerity, not correct. Ki ein nechona, no, not correct. An open grave, kever patuach, an open grave. Garon is a throat, actually, so it's ill. Is there a throat? Is an open grave. Lishonam, and their tongue is very smooth or slippery, they translate here. So all negative things, and very focused. Notice that this is all not actions, but things that are about speech and words and how they come across. All right, 11. Ha'ashimam Elohim. So ashem is guilty. So, and in this form of the verb is make them guilty, Elohim. Yiplu, let them fall on their own devices. The rov pshuim. So here we have guilt in the first word, and the first word here is the hifil form of guilt, but it's the same word that we say ashamnu on Yom Kippur. Ashamnu. That's the same. That's that word for we are guilty. So this is God. They are guilty. Condemn them. Barov, and this is the word for pesha, is also evil or crime or bad deeds. Cast them out for their crimes, ki maru vach, because they make you they rebel against you, or they defy you, or they refuse to surround themselves with holiness. 12. And again, now here's a contrast, starting with the vav, v'yismechu. So all kol chosevach, but all who take refuge in you, simcha, simchu, sameach, tisamach. Here there will be joy. So again, there's contrast between those who are doing things that are evil in the world, who are full of lies and murder and deceit and corruption, but those who do the opposite. In other words, those who increase holiness in the world will feel joy. Yerananu, this is will vatasa. So again, the contrast. They will be jubilant. They will have joy, and ohave, ending up shemecha, loving your name. Okay, we're going to run through this, and then we're going to look some of this. Let's see how we're doing. We're going to really run through this. This 13 is our last verse. Ki ata tivarech, because or for or is it also as a result of you tivarech, you will bless tzaddik Hashem. You will bless those who are just. You will bless those who do right. You will bless those who increase holiness, Hashem. Encompassing him, now we get this very interesting word at the last, ta'atrenu, and favor him like a shield. This one translates, or encompass him, or surround him with favor. Okay, so let's now go back to the beginning. And let me pause now for questions, or let's look at the overall arch. And if other people have different translations, we're going to look right now. I'm going to actually, do I have mine here? Where is my Levy? He does some interesting things here. Okay, so any questions? Should I pause now, Harold? Can't hear you, Bubala. You're muted.
Yes. Michael Goldstein has his hand up, literally.
Okay, good.
Rabbi, I don't mean this as a criticism, but it seems to me that each psalm talks about the power of God, the Lord, and how he can help us if we do the just or right thing. My question is, why are all of these psalms dealing with the same overall topic?
And what do you think?
What do I think? I think that thousands of years ago, when they were composed, they wanted to make sure that people were, quote unquote, indoctrinated with this belief.
Well, indoctrinated is kind of a negative word. So can you imagine there being a more positive way to put it?
Well, it seems that the repetition of each psalm in that broad idea, it confirms what is being said over and over, and it's to impress on those who recite the psalm and internalize the psalm that which the psalm is guiding them to. I'm just asking, why so many?
And we're only up to Psalm 5.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask that to the group. What do you think? Saul, I see Saul's.
So if I'm right, that these psalms were basically sung by the Levites at the sacrificial service. It's not that people were sitting at home in their tents reading these things. Remember, most people didn't read. The priest read. The person on his farm didn't read, but he had to bring his sacrifice at least 4 times a year, if not more. And he would hear these psalms saying, which basically would say to, especially this psalm, to me, there are these people who say nasty things about me, really, really nasty things. But Hashem will get you through it. And they hear this and they go home with it and they think about it. We now read all 150 in a row. No, I don't think most people do that either. They find 1 or 2 that they really like that speaks to them.
Excellent. Some people do read all 150 in a row. As I said, there's some traditions in some communities of reciting them all every week or every month, or even if you go to the Kotel, what you see women doing mostly at the Kotel is reciting the book of Psalms. That's mostly what women are doing, sitting there. Besides when they daven a service, they're reciting Psalms. Or you see somebody sitting at a bedside in a hospital, they're reciting Psalms. But I think it's an important point about what the role repetition takes. First of all, I think there are some differences, and hopefully you'll start to see them and also see what things that are rhythmically repeated. But I would ask anybody who does anything that has repetition, there's a big question of what's the role of repetition in learning or in, I would say it's true for those of you who are even exercise people. Why do you do the same exercise every day? Or what's the purpose of repetition for those of you who meditate? What's the role of repeated meditation? Aren't you just saying the same thing every day? Aren't you just, and I think repetition there's a question about repetition that's hard for us as modern people sometimes to absorb, and we have to look at it in different ways. But let me open it up and see. I see a lot of people have things to say, Harold, so let's.
Sarah Siegel has had her hand up for 15 minutes. Sarah, why don't you go?
Oh, you know what? So I love all I've seen in the chat in answer to the question. And I guess, Harold, you're moving us on. So.
No, I want to hear what people have to say about this question.
I thought, yeah, let's wait.
All right. So, Aura, you're next.
So I had a question, and it's somewhat related. In verse 5, I think it says God dooms the evildoers. And I guess my question is, and this is a life question, if God dooms the evildoers, why do they seem to thrive? What does it mean to doom? To me, it's a very active thing. You know, you're going to do something active. And everything here, it's describing God is angry and God is unhappy and God doesn't like and God detests. And I will go into the house of God and it all will be well. And so it's a little disconcerting.
Yep. Okay, I'm going to write that down. Let's hold on to that. I just want to go back, and that's an excellent question. But I want to go back to this question about Michael's question about why the repetition of some of these themes. But I'm holding on to that, or I won't lose it.
No, I have an answer to that question.
Okay, good. So
to me, it's about our weak memories, whether it's mental memory, emotional memory, muscle memory when we do the exercises.
Yeah.
And we have to repeat it, so we have to remind ourselves because we're always confronted with things that wipe it away.
Yeah. Thank you.
Merritt had her hand up next. Merritt?
Thanks, Harold. In addition to the weakness of memory, I'd also say in my own life, sometimes I need to hear kind of basically the same thing, but with subtle differences over and over until I am ripe to then get it. Mm-hmm. Even though I've been hearing it all along and I've been kind of paying lip service, then suddenly I'll get it.
Yeah.
And I don't even think all the Psalms are the same, but there is a repetitive element. And that's because you're not always ready to hear it. But if it's always there being repeated, you get extra chances.
Yep.
So
Thank you.
That's it.
Robin.
There's this Edna St. Vincent Millay quote, life is not one damn thing after another. It's the same damn thing over and over again. And I mean, patterns run deep. My patterns run very deep. And God, I need so many reminders. You know, every morning I wake up, be kind. That's my big thing, be kind. Within an hour, I've already blown it, you know, and I just need those reminders. So that's why I think we need it. Lots of practice, lots of reminders.
Great. Thank you.
Noreen.
I was going to say that for me, it's relational, so that when we're called, what the Psalms do for us is they call us into this community, and so that you may be, or one may be good, but there are other people still activating the same circle of our human nature, so that the Psalms, to me, the calling us back to the temple, calling us back to holiness, is all about bringing us back as these subtle, you know, sin for lack of a better nerve, or evil doing. You know, it keeps taking a different you, but it shows up.
Yep. Thank you.
Ginny.
I think we're only human, and I think we have to hear things over and over again to really get them. And I think evil is very powerful and very tempting and can be in many different ways, like gossip or something that seems simplistic. But as you think about it and you hear it in many different ways, you're reminded you're just human, but be mindful of these things. So that's what I think it
Thank
means.
you. That speaks to me too. Thank you.
Sarah Kleinbaum.
I think what everybody has said before is true. You know, you need the constant reminders, so eventually they'll become part of you, and you can feel comfortable hearing them. You know, and it's just something that you need to hear over and over again until it embraces you.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree.
Hillary.
Hi. Yeah, much of what I was thinking already has been said, so I'll just add, neurons that fire together wire together.
Mm.
And
Beautiful.
that kind of reminders, repetition, and also that it's part of our, that we look for reflections, like reflecting the best parts of ourselves. We're not alone, right? We're not living in this isolated individual space. We're actually, even living in a communal space is something that we're actually living in a communal space, but we need to be reminded that we're actually living in community with other human beings.
Yeah.
So, and that we're constantly mirroring each other and finding what's the best parts of ourselves. So.
Yep. Beautiful.
Cantor Nimi, the teaching that you put in the chat, would you like to share that with us?
Yeah, sure. I remember I engaged a bit with some interpretation of Bishalath from Rabbeinu Bachya, who's a commentator, who talks about the reason for the need for the circuitous path that the Israelites took when they wandered through the desert. That one of the reasons was because God needed more opportunities to show wonders and miracles to prove to the Israelite people God's power and commitment to them. So that the repetition and the repetition of shared experience of those miracles and wonders was necessary, because if you look at the way that the Israelites responded, they needed the repetition.
Julia Ostrov. Julia,
Sorry.
are you?
Yeah, it's Kristen.
You know.
Something that I was just in terms of like the repetition, and also like I was also feeling a sense of like a lot of these are very similar, but I was reminded that a few years ago I read this book by, I believe he was a Jesuit priest, and I'm not remembering his name, but he talked about the Ignatian tradition of prayer. And I took notes on these different ways that of contemplating, and he talked about Psalms being perfect for this type of meditation. And there's a series of questions that you can go through, and one of them is one of the meditation practices was about looking at a single word and thinking about different questions that come up for you with that word, and even just focusing on that one part. And but I remember him mentioning that Psalms were great. You could look at any passage in biblical text, but that Psalms were particularly useful for these versions of meditation and contemplation.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Betsy Immersheim.
Hi, I think it's a peeling process, like an onion. Sometimes the same thing means something very different. It's not just day to day that we're in a different space, but I think that from my growth today, tomorrow, even experiencing the same thing, I experience it differently.
Yeah.
And I also find that, especially Kabbalat Shabbat, the repetition with music of the Psalms on Friday night touched me so deeply, and differently at different weeks. So I love that, and I look forward to it every week because of it.
Beautiful.
So Rabbi, we have so many hands up. It's like the row here at Trader Joe's downtown. So I've asked people to keep their comments for tomorrow, so that we don't have to rush things. And perhaps either you have a comment or we'll have Adria play us out. What do you think?
And I think this shows, Michael, what a great question you're asking, that this is it's really triggering and bringing out a lot of different, not triggering is the bad word, but evoking a lot of responses from people. And I think it's also our contemporary world doesn't like repetition very much. We want kind of and this is, I think, goes to the fast food culture we're in, or the fast. We believe we need new things all the time. You know, our contemporary American culture is, we want something new. We want to move on. We don't want to stay with something. And the Psalms are very countercultural that way. And I really want to hear more from people tomorrow about just this general issue. You learn, I think, first of all, we're always different people. You know, the river might be moving, but we're different people, we're different rocks that the water's flowing over. As I keep saying, I've really been very close to these Psalms since I was 15 years old. I'm 60 years old, and I'm learning new things about these Psalms studying with you. They're the same words that they were when, whatever it was, I can't do the math, when I was 15. But I am with you, all of you, learning new things, seeing new things. And there's a level of, this is very true. When you're in the desert and everything at first looks brown, and then you're there longer and longer, and the colors start, you can't believe it's not the same color anymore. And you spend more time looking, and you see texture, and you see, subtleties that when you first look at something, you just see the big outlines. And I feel that's true also about the Psalms. At first, if you read them through quickly, they're all exactly the same. And then you start to see, and for me, it's true. So for Psalms, I'm very familiar with them. But for me, what's newer in my life is listening to a symphony, for instance. And things get repeated a lot in symphonies, right? But there's always a little difference, or there's something new, or hearing it when the strings are playing, it sounds a little different when it's passed off to a different instrument, even if it's the same motif. Anyway, so play us out, Adria, and we'll continue this tomorrow. Thanks, everybody. And thank you, Michael, for a great question. Adria, you're muted.
I got it. You're right. You're okay now, Adria.
Okay.
Oh my God. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I was just saying I switched gears a little bit based on what we were talking about. This is very short, but join in whenever you want and you'll have a chance to sing it through. I'm sure you'll all recognize it.
Beautiful, beautiful reference to this psalm. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. We'll leave the room open as usual for a few minutes. And I just love studying with all of you. Thank you.